G'day, I'm Colin. Welcome again. It's us secular dudes, we secular dudes. I'm Colin, interested bystander, and I'm here with Dr. Ian Story. We were just going to react
I'm glad you
to.
called me doctor. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Uh, um, so today we're going to do a reaction video. We haven't done that before, but I really enjoyed this video. I mean, I really love. This is Francesca Stavrakopoulou. She's a biblical historian from the UK. She's an atheist, and she appeared on years ago now on Charlie Pickering's The Nightly or The Weekly. I love her work. I love what she does, but this was just a brief interlude between the pair of them, and I thought it was pretty funny and pretty interesting. Charlie Pickering was Catholic, or is a Catholic? No, was a Catholic, and he's now a Jew. He took on Judaism. I don't know. You know more about that than
me. He took it on when he got married to a Jewish woman.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So anyway, we'll have a listen and see what happens. I don't know. Let's go.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting to take on a new religion. But okay, so I'll start. I'm in control of the recording.
You are.
Yeah. So just stick your finger up or whatever whenever you want me to pause it.
I'll just do that. Yeah.
Western culture, and
I'll keep my eye out.
That Bible.
Professor Francesca Stavrakopoulou is the head of theology and religion at the University of Exeter in the UK. She's a renowned biblical scholar who's devoted her life to looking for the historical evidence of one of the world's most important books.
But I'm not a fundamentalist who takes every word of the Bible as fact. I think the truth is much more interesting.
Would you please welcome Francesca Stavrakopoulou?
He found the name Francesca hard to say. Yeah. Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about the Bible.
Yeah.
And I want to learn more about it. First off, who wrote it and when?
Some people think that Moses wrote it, which he didn't, because Moses didn't exist. So I think who did write it. And it's basically a collection of different authors from centuries and centuries. So probably with the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament, you're talking about at least 500 years in the making. With the New Testament, you're talking about probably 150 to 200 years in the making. But basically, it was all written by men with daddy issues.
Here's the thing. There are people right now writing complaint letters just on the first. Right, so I'm wondering, why is taking a historical approach to the Bible so controversial?
It's controversial because when you do take a historical approach, so look at the archaeological evidence for sort of events or people described in the Bible, it's very hard to find corroborating evidence to support the biblical claims about the past. So one saying, did this actually happen or not? So was Jonah swallowed by a big fish? Obviously, no, he wasn't swallowed by a big fish. Was there an exodus from Egypt? No, there wasn't an exodus. So once you start doing that, then you have to start doubting the credibility of all the other claims that the Bible makes. And that's why people get annoyed, because for some reason, people like to think that the Bible's true.
Right. People like to think that the Bible is true.
Yeah.
We'll get back. The first thing, one of the first things you said was Moses wasn't real.
Yeah.
Right. Now, we've just had Pesach, the celebration of freedom of the Jews.
Yeah.
Led by Moses to freedom.
Yeah.
And you're saying he wasn't real.
No, he probably wasn't. So there's a lot about him that's really interesting. So in his tradition, the traditions that are told about him, so Moses is an Egyptian name. The Hebrew Bible writers kind of say this name is derived from a Hebrew verb, meaning to draw out of the water. So when he was a baby and kind of set into the basket of reeds. But actually,
so far, story checks out.
So far, it checks out, except that Moses himself, there's no evidence for him being a historical figure like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of that. It's all made up. But he's drawn on different sorts of religious figures that probably were around very broadly in the culture. So he's like a bit of a magician. So, you know, he's like, whoa, look at this star.
Yeah, we all like a good magician, but some people want to believe it's more than that. you know? Like when you say none of that was real, it was all made up. How do you know?
Because dating the texts, you can see in terms of the Hebrew words that are used, in terms of some of the details, like references to camels. There were no camels in that part of the world at that time. That kind of stuff.
You lied to me, Cecil B. DeMille.
But yeah, that kind of detail.
It's interesting to me that the reporter, because he's not really reporting, he's inputting as well. But in general, a reporter can hide behind asking questions from a very conservative position.
How so?
But he's also featuring her on the show because obviously he's sharing some of her position as well. His style is also, people were saying at the time he was copying not from Jimmy Stewart, but from that British guy who went to America who did stand-up comedy. Forget his name. But he would mix in political comment. But it seemed quite derived, but he was doing an okay job at that point in time. Yeah, this is a really, really interesting interview, isn't it? To say that Moses did not exist.
Yeah, well,
Or
and
probably
she said,
did.
yeah, there's no evidence for his existence, and the Jews weren't in Egypt at the time. From the evidence, it would seem they were in Babylon or whatever, Samaria, Babylon. So yeah, I mean, and this is why it's good to listen to her, because she actually, if I find that when you talk to other atheists, myself included, that we know a bit, but like here's someone who's devoted her career to studying this ancient text, and following it up in a more extended interviews. I mean, she says, when you're looking at biblical history or the history of the books, that it's not just in the text. I mean, you can go to these sites, you can look at the archaeology, it's not just a textually derived situation. It depends on all these other disciplines to draw together the information. And so, as I understand it, she's saying that there is no historical evidence for the existence of Moses. There's only the text, and and there's a few other made-up ones as well. There you go.
That these texts are written many centuries after the events that they're describing. And then you can see the ideology. Well, why are they telling the story about escape from slavery and oppression and movement into promised land? It's because the writers themselves were in their own kind of slavery and oppression, but in Babylon in the 6th century BCE, not in Egypt.
Yeah, that's how I heard the story. They were in Babylon,
and
the Assyrians had actually taken the scribes and Pharisees, the higher layers of the Jewish religion, into Babylon, and were kind of forming, were kind of schooling them. I think that's the way I heard it, right?
Yeah, okay.
They were in Babylon, and the exodus that they talked about was about the exodus of these people that were taken into Babylon by the Babylonians.
Who left with literacy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, interesting.
But then again, like you say, I haven't studied it deeply. I've just read a few books, and you've got to mistrust the books you even read, right? So it's really great to hear from someone who's studied it very deeply.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a bit of a laugh. I don't mind Charlie's humour. I think he's a bit of a funny man.
Yeah, okay.
Hundreds and hundreds of years before that.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. But you love the Bible.
Yeah, I do.
Why? Like if you like go, well, that's not real, he's not a guy.
Like the most amazing collection of ancient literature. It's like reading, it's like going into a time capsule. It's like time traveling, and you get to read all about these different sorts of myths and legends. Like, one of the most important myths in the Old Testament Hebrew Bible is the idea that God had to fight a massive sea dragon to create the world. Now, you don't get that in Genesis. You get hints of it in Genesis, but you do get it.
Hang on, what are the hints?
The hints.
What? No, like I'm just curious. Like, yeah, it's like you know, it's on the Agandray. Like, what was it? What's
So one of the hints is on the such and such a day when God was making the world, he made the great sea monsters. And the word that they don't actually do that in the Bible, but the word that they use is the ancient word for this is tanin, which is this ancient mythical, watery, ferocious chaos monster, like a sea dragon. But then we read all about his actual battle with the sea dragon in the book of Isaiah and in the book of Job and in the Psalms. So it's all there. It's just that everyone kind of privileges the beginning of the book because most people get bored by the time they get to like Leviticus. And then
it's just been in Leviticus.
And they don't like reading Leviticus. It's pretty nasty stuff.
It's like this is what you do with Jews.
Yeah, yeah.
In a drawer, see if it grows.
Yeah.
Call the rabbi, burn your house down. Like it's
And decry homosexuality and, you know, and kill your enemies and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, very, very, very. As you said, you know, it's how to
Sorry.
administer things. No, that's all right. I was just saying, it's just how to administer things. You know, it's this is what should be.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and that's about as far as I got. I've got to admit.
Well, there is one guy who has the opinion that they were sent back into, I guess, Judea or wherever it was to be kind of administrators.
Oh,
And to,
okay.
you know, more importantly, collect the taxes.
Yeah. Money from the
Uh,
temple, bit of tithing.
Jesus today. So I've been to Jerusalem, the old city of Jerusalem, and it's amazing when the places mentioned in the Bible are in front of you. Like I stood in the Garden of Gethsemane, and the fact that these are real places starts to make you feel like this is more true. Why does it become more compelling? Because it's in a place that exists.
Whether you're, you know, an atheist like me or you're religious like other people, the Bible plays such a massive role in our lives, right from when we're kids, that somehow to be in these places, I think you can't but help just feel engaged and excited and curious. And to go somewhere like Jerusalem, where obviously the Bible still matters, because as we know, Jerusalem is still the kind of the heart, the kind of the central place for Judaism, Christianity, and obviously Islam as well. And we know the political tensions, we see it on the news all the time. You can't but help feel impacted by that.
Now, you've already pointed out a few things that weren't real in the Bible.
Yeah.
What was real? Like, I believe the Garden of Eden, you believe, was a real place.
Well, I believe it's based on a real place. It's based on the Jerusalem temple that was supposedly built by Solomon and was destroyed. And we think probably historically it was destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BCE. And the temple itself is meant to be like the dwelling place of the god. And like humans, God wants a nice house and he wants a nice garden. And it's the meeting place between the heavenly realm and the earthly realm. And so it was filled with trees, and it had it was a very sensory experience going to the temple. There were nice smells of incense, and that's what the story of Eden is based on. It's the idea is that human beings, or a king in this case, was in a very privileged position like that with God. He messes up, he gets expelled from the garden. So he's like thrown out the temple, and that's when the temple historically is destroyed. And the kings of Israel no longer exist.
So if you were editing the Bible, what would you take out? Is there anything that you'd remove?
No.
I mean, that's pretty controversial. Surely not all of them.
Okay. Paul. Anything written by St. Paul?
Just all of Paul. That's not taking Paul out of the Beatles. He was pretty important.
Oh, can we pause there? So true. Wasn't Paul a twisted sister? You know, I have this thorn in my side and, oh, I'm suffering and you've got to suffer as well. It's kind of
Right.
yeah, the epistles of Paul are quite how would you say, they're not the highlight of the Bible, put it that way.
Yeah, look, I've got to say my biblical literacy is almost zilch. I've never read the book all the way through. It's only been in response to particular questions, whether it's about religious attitudes or whatever, to a particular thing where I'll go and look at specific phrase or specific sections. I was going to say, I know that's the wrong word, but particular references. I'll go and look up particular references. Whereas you've read it a number of times, haven't you?
I grew up with it, and I grew up with people who believed it deeply, but I also grew up with a father who taught science at high school.
Yep.
And I also had when I was younger, I had Paddy Marlin. I mostly stayed in and grew a deep relationship with the library and books. And I loved reading the science section. So I was converted by Billy Graham, and
Oh.
I got all their literature, and I thought, oh, this is just terrible. This is like really bad storytelling. Why don't I read the source? Because obviously there are a lot of people who are inspired by it, including some of the greatest minds in history. Right? So I gave myself the task of reading it 3 times. The first time through, I was really impressed with the words of Jesus and the idea of a new, what's the word? You have a new contract with God, and it's a lot less sort of our tribe is going to be the tribe that's favoured, the chosen people, and allows in the Gentiles and all of that sort of stuff, which was good news for the Roman slaves who were, and the Romans, you know, the poor of Rome, who were brought into this religion this way. Plus, you could drink alcohol and eat
Mine was
what you
okay.
wanted. But anyway, no, I'm being, trivial there. But so I did read it 3 times, but by the 3rd time, it was just so full of contradiction and things going this way and things going that way. I was really sick of it. So I kind of sped read it just to finish it, because I set the task for myself. So, being a little bit Asperger's, I suppose, I had to do it. And it totally converted me into an atheist in the end. So little by little, I realized this doesn't work, that doesn't work. And then at halfway through, I kind of thought, maybe this is good for people, maybe because it helps bring people together. Maybe there are lessons that help us ethically. Even that evaporated when I really thought about how ethics works, and started reading Socrates and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I did read it. I didn't find it pleasant, especially towards the end, and I have forgotten most of it. but I certainly haven't forgotten the lesson that there's a book here which is being heralded as the truth, and it's not. And it's being heralded as the truth by not just a large section of society, but by the fundamental, roots of the system, that of church and state. And yeah, so it really had a lot to do with my becoming an atheist. I think Penn from Penn and Teller says the best way to create an atheist is to get them to read get people to read the Bible. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my background's a little bit different, because I had no, I did end up at a Christian school, but I didn't get there till 4th grade, so 10 or 11 or something. And I'd had no religious upbringing at all. I mean, my father was a staunch atheist, although that was not a discussion that we'd ever had personally, because I was pretty young when he died. But he gave.
Well, also atheists learn not to be too loud. you know.
Well, yeah. There's that. There's there's the stigma of
Your
atheism.
Sigma. Yeah.
But yeah, so I had no regular church going or any exposure to it really, and I mean both my parents in their own right. My father was a chemist, who went on to become a pharmacist. My mum was a pharmacist, and I guess mum was probably a little bit more spiritual maybe, but she wasn't a believer, and yeah, so I had no exposure. I had no reason to believe. But I thought it was just a bit of a, I don't know, a bit of a something some people did. I had no idea about it, and I had no interest in it
Well,
because
I
I didn't
envy
need it
you.
for my worldview.
I envy you because it tore me apart, you know,
Yeah.
going to hell, you know. Yeah.
Well, you hear that a lot. You hear that a lot in the deconstruction videos, and I always think of Matt Dillahunty talking about, the struggles of actually deconverting. It can be, and back at the time of that sort of, I don't really like the term, but that first wave of new atheism, as they would call it, and there was a lot of people leaving religion at the time, and there were kids, and they were getting thrown out of their home because they decided that they didn't believe anymore, and getting cut off from their families and things. I knew a girl. She was in the Seventh Day Adventists, and when she left the church, that was it. And she was just sort of cast out onto her own in the world, and
Yeah.
and, and that's how she lived her life after that.
Yeah. I
So
never
that's,
suffered it that badly. That's terrible. Seventh-day Adventist and um,
I think the
the
brethren are the
ones,
same.
brethren. Yeah. There's a
Yeah,
lot of sects like that that are the same.
yeah. So it's but yeah, I sort of feel a little bit lucky that I didn't have that that trauma to process because yeah, it never occurred to me. It was never, by the time I started considering religion, which wasn't until I was well into my adult years, um, it never really, it was never a necessary component in my worldview. I thought, as I say, I was at a religious school at one point, and I grew up in a house where evolution was just. It's not that it was stated as a doctrine. It was just, oh, this is the story of how this happened. So
Mm.
that was just always my worldview. Always conformed with, um, I guess what the evidence pointed to, and
I had a debate in grade 10, our grade 10 in Queensland,
okay.
high school, with a good mate of mine who's since become high up in the Church of Christ. He was a good mate then.
Hmm.
I haven't kept in contact. And we debated whether the Bible was consistent with evolution. And I had the enviable task of arguing that it was. Um, and so I think my argument was that the truths in the Bible were setting us on the right path or something like that, which I don't believe any longer. Um, but it was really interesting. I had a lot of sympathy from my classmates for it. But the other guy, I won't name him, but the other guy won the debate. He clearly was a better debater.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, he clearly is a better minister of religion as a result. Um, Personally, I shy away from that kind of political activity, you know,
Hmm.
lying for God or lying for atheism, I don't see as being productive for anybody. Rather, sort of raising doubt, getting people to think and doubt is more. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. I lost the
Yeah.
debate. I didn't
Yeah.
really lose the crowd, but I lost the debate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because you said lying for God or lying for atheism. It's interesting how atheism has become a thing, and I know that there have been smarter people than me that have commented on this. That just like it's such a small part of my life. Like the fact that I'm an atheist is just so you know, sundry, is that the right word? You know, it is just, religion is just not important to me, except for its political impact, you know, and its social impact. And that's where I guess my
Motivation.
willingness, well, my willingness to sort of attach that label to myself, whereas I wouldn't normally any more than, you know, I, I often say, you know, fairies at the bottom of the garden. Like, if you want to believe it's true, that's fine. But when it starts having a political impact or a social impact, then it's problematic. And I think that religion overall, it does more harm than good. I can't. I mean, I struggle to see where the good it does is, because you can't separate the good that it does from charitable, like exemptions through charitable causes and things like that. So it's a social club with tax, you know, sort of tax deductibility. It's yeah. I don't know that the money
I
that
think I saw it more as a very positive thing to have, to get people to question and to seek the truth and to find real ways of defining ethics and morality in their lives. Because these, you know, I mean, these are difficult questions, and when you put up mythology in the middle of it, people's lives just go off in all kinds of weird directions. So for me, in the end, it wasn't just that I didn't see religion as a good thing, but I saw it as a good thing to get people to start to think rationally about human behavior, and human interaction. I saw it as a good thing I saw atheism as a good thing. You know what I mean? Rather than
yeah,
just something. Um, and um, and I admire people who are politically active about it. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I'm not that way. I'm sure that if I started being, you know, telling lies for atheism, I'd start to believe my own lies. You know, I'm a bit weak-willed that way. I'd rather think. I'd rather have doubts and share doubts, and but the moment you do that, of course, I mean, I totally believe in freedom of speech. Okay, everyone has the right to freedom of speech, but I don't believe that. I think some people misuse it as a way to propagandize for systems of thought that tie people up in knots. And I really am opposed. I know I'm getting vague here, but I'm opposed to that way in which systems of thought that are obviously wrong are used politically to tie people up in knots against their own benefit.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's been, you look at the way religion is used in America, and particularly under this current administration. But for a long time, the
That's a good
influence,
example because it drives a wedge between people.
it does, and freedom of speech is fine, but then you wouldn't want unrestrained speech in a primary school classroom. You know, and when we see religion starting to seep into, I mean, apart from the fact that we subsidise religiously oriented schools, when it starts to creep into the public education system, or when people are attracted away from the public education system because they believe that their children are going to end up with a greater morality if they attend a religious school, that's troubling. If kids are hearing, well, you know how hard it is once you've been indoctrinated, how hard it is to break out of that.
I certainly do, yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard those. Like, as I say, I've never had to go through it, but I've heard these stories so many times, and I think it's just so unfair that little kids. I remember there was a show called Jesus Camp. You know, these little kids with tears streaming down their faces because they were so scared of the possibility that they were going to end up in hell, or their parents or their brother and their pet was never going to make it into heaven. You know, so yeah, freedom of speech, but that's something I've never really thought about much, but when does freedom of speech in an educational situation with young and impressionable children cross a line? I mean,
Yeah.
you're not allowed to talk about this, you're not allowed to swear at your, well, in school generally, but I suppose I was thinking particularly of the religious schools when it's like, oh no, you can't have this book in the library because it celebrates homosexuality or whatever it is. But then they encourage kids I was encouraged to read the Bible when I started at the school that I ended up at. Read the Bible, but as many people pointed out, it's a horror story. Like it is pretty brutal. It's the sort of stuff
Oh,
that
it's
would get an R
horrible.
rating.
It's our tribe is better than yours, and where we can burn down your houses, rape your women, kill every man child.
Yeah, and smash
Disgusting stuff.
the babies on the rocks.
Yeah, and that's a prime example of driving a wedge, and even arguing for war based on a total myth. Yeah, it's pretty nasty stuff. I think the one thing about freedom of speech, I think I've argued this many times probably, is that at the moment the Overton window has been smashed open in so many different ways because of the internet. And I think people who thought they were the guardians of truth and sensible thought and balance, I must admit, like Charlie Pickering, are disgusted at the fact that so many people are starting to think for themselves, even if even if I've got to admit they're thinking pretty weirdly in some directions. I think we've got to be careful of this attempt to clean up the internet, and it's happening behind the scenes. There's a lot of contributors, especially left-wing, but not only left-wing, right-wing ones as well, who are being threatened, and a lot who are being shut down. Some of the ones who aren't being shut down are because they have too big like Joe Rogan, they just have too big an audience. But I'm sure they would love to shut him down. He's not the best example of a great, orator or anything, or a great thinker, but he does nudge the Overton window all the time. And I think they really really hate that. Whereas previously, when it was just text, they could maintain the myth that we had freedom of speech,
Just burn the books.
But not really, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, when books first came online, if you like, with the Gutenberg press, straight after that were the pogroms by the Catholic Church. All of the the witch trials and all of that, and the massacres, because they really feared the influence of people having books. A lot of people, the first books they were reading were about anatomy, and they didn't want people to know about their body and how it worked.
Yeah.
It has to be this magical, mythical thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because if I mean, I would argue that there's nothing out there that I shouldn't read or hear, but I reckon my critical faculties are in pretty good shape. Whereas if you're a kid that's grown up in, one of the strict, particularly the biblical literalist schools of thought, you're not ready.
No.
You're
not ready for freedom of speech. Yeah.
Exactly. Or you're not
kind
ready.
of agree with you.
Yeah, you're not ready to start digesting Mein Kampf just as to do well for whatever reason. But some people will take if you have a predisposition to bigotry, a religious upbringing seems to me, I don't know about the research, but it would seem to me that most people who've not come from, but who remain within these staunchly religious worlds, it's very much centered on othering. It's like, yeah, inside here we're all good and lovely and nice so long as you do what you're told, and outside there it's evil, and you know, you just don't want to go there because everyone that's not part of this group is someone to make war on or a group to make war on. That seems to be a particularly religious, and maybe, and it seeps into nationalism as well, I know. And then often nationalism is underpinned by a particular religious doctrine, whatever form it takes. I don't know. I just fear that if kids grow up in an environment where their critical thinking has always got to be restricted to within the frame of, oh yes, but Jesus, or oh yes, but Hindi or Ganesh or whatever, I don't know. I just, it doesn't make for a better world.
I used to argue when I was about 3/4 the way out, maybe about 0.69% of the proportion. I don't know, but anyway, I always used to argue it doesn't matter how ridiculous the claims are that you make, because if you get rid of people who can see through them, then you got rid of people who could probably be, be enemies in the system. Better to keep the sheep and get rid of the people who think for themselves.
Kill the heretics.
I don't know if that's true, but I always
Kill
used
the
to joke
heretics.
that.
Kill the apostates. Yeah, get rid of them all. Well, I mean, and that's why this continued move towards private education, which is sort of a proxy for religious education. You know, you don't want that. You talk about, you know, you mentioned earlier that you know, you thought maybe there was value in having the discussion about the value of religion as a point of critical thinking, of learning how to think critically. And this came up with the chaplaincy. It's like, why don't we just have secular workers? Why don't we just have trained psychologists working in the schools or whatever it
much
is?
better. Yeah.
Rather than having someone who comes from a doctrinal position. You know, it's not bad when there's new discoveries and it's like, oh, I was wrong on that, you know, oh, there you go. But with doctrine, it doesn't move that quickly. It's like, no, this is it. This is the way it is. Yeah, anyway.
Let's get back to the video, I
on
guess.
with the show. On with the show,
Okay.
yeah.
Because Paul wrote a huge amount of the New Testament. He was by and large the founder of the church.
He was the founder of Christianity.
So what have you got against
it? Goes on and on and on.
It is a bit like he took everything he wrote. Like I wrote some letters to the Corinthians. I'll put that in. Did the Corinthians ever write back?
We don't know if they did. Maybe. But he's so down on humanity. He's just really kind of like, oh, you humans, you're so bad, you're so sinful. And it's like, oh, come on. We're not that bad. The Hebrew Bible, everyone thinks that the God of the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, is the kind of like vengeful, hateful, angry one who's like kicking ass all the time. And that the God of the New Testament is kind of like, oh, I love you. But it's not like that at all. The God of the New Testament, he's gone. He's like not interested at all in humanity. Like he's not really present in the New Testament. It's all about Jesus.
Because that's the thing, like early on in the Bible, God rocks up. Like God is literally there. And he goes, hey, Abraham, do this. Moses, here's some 10 Commandments. Exactly. They'll be useful. Yeah. And then he's talking directly to people.
Yeah.
And then it becomes people saying, oh, you just missed him. God was here.
Yeah.
And he said this. And then by the end of it, it's like, I know a guy who spoke to a dude who saw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be honest, you know, Paul started off as a Jew, like Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. I think he'd be spinning in his grave if he knew what was really going on in his life.
If he existed.
Passionate Jewish man, you know, like John the Baptist was probably sort of Jesus' initial teacher. And like Jesus kind of uses breakaway movement. You know, it's kind of like, you know, some pop group, like the Beatles, like kind of splitting up and like John going off with Yoko. It's problematic.
I'm sorry, that is the most controversial thing I've ever anyone say in my life is that the career of Jesus is like John teaming up with Yoko. It's extraordinary. Okay, like you're an atheist.
Yeah.
But you're passionate about the Bible.
Yeah.
But you can understand that people can be quite angry at all of the things that you're saying right now.
People are always angry with me because I'm an atheist, because I'm a woman, because I'm a professor.
And what is harder in your line of work, being an atheist or a woman?
I think being a woman is still harder than being an atheist. Because I'm an atheist, because people can't say to me, because most people in my field, most academics, are Christian or Jewish. So I say to them, I haven't got the same emotional investment in these texts as you do, but nonetheless, I still think these texts are really important. They are that absolute bedrock of Western cultural preferences and values. And so it's important, it's responsible, I think, to critique those ideas and say where they come from and how kind of representative should this be? How important should these texts be? The Bible is a cultural icon, whether we like it or not.
I hope you don't mind if I pause just for a second.
No.
The one of the greatest political thinkers, according to a lot of Western scholars, is Machiavelli. And Machiavelli's claim is that a country that has a strong religious belief underpinning it is much more cohesive, much more likely to be successful. I totally don't believe that, but you can see why people would, and why there's a lot of people who are not necessarily who may even be atheists, but who believe that, and who for that reason push religion.
Yeah, no, it's I find that a bit disconcerting where, and as you say, there's quite a few atheists out there who go, yeah, but religion's good for that cohesion thing, and it's like, I mean, when was Machiavelli writing? 1460s or something like that? Give or take.
But it is still regarded like, and he's every politician who lies is basically taking something from Machiavelli. Every single day, and everything they say. Anyway, I won't go too far down that route. But yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that there's certainly plenty of religious empires that have come and gone since then. Like they've particularly through Europe, where I mean, you could argue that it's the Catholic Church, but certainly there's been, well, they always want to kill each other, don't they? They always fight to the death, and it's always with God on their side.
Yeah, I think there were. I think that's a good topic for another day. What happened? Why? What happened in Europe with the different forms of Christianity and the massacres, and how people started to get sick of it and stuff like that. That's
yeah, no, absolutely something we should look at. I think just to Machiavelli, this notion that societies that are really where everyone is bound to God. I mean, that's sort of what the Christian right are trying to renormalize in the States and around the Western world. I think they're trying to. There's been this big push to reinsert religion into public life, particularly in the light of the changing demographics here in Australia, where it's, I think now, or they're expecting at the next census more than half.
All across the Western world.
Yeah.
Britain, America, Australia, Europe. There are lots and lots of disaffected young men, and they're being given an automatic kind of brotherhood, in these fascist groups, and and with a sort of and they very often associate Christianity with it.
Yep. Yeah. You said a lot. And the interesting thing is, or what I find interesting, so that's sort of the overt side of it, but the covert side of it is that despite the fact that by denomination, I think, is it non-belief is well, the census was an interesting thing where despite the best policy advice and despite the weight of numbers, we still don't have that option to say, well, I'm not religious when it comes to the choice about what religion are you. You sort of tuck non-belief, atheism under the block of what religion are you? I'm an atheist, rather than just being able to say, well, I'm not religious. This question isn't relevant to me. Because I think they're still expecting that non-belief will, in the next census, will top the 50% mark. But we still won't see policies that reflect that, I don't think, for a long time yet.
No. Well, because for a politician to even say any of the things that this woman has said would be instant death. The media would be on her back. everyone would be, they'd be excited about having a scalp, or even just, it makes good media. It's not going to happen very soon that politicians are going to be clamoring to say they're atheists. The best they can say is that they don't believe in this or that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, because I think secular policy is the right policy in every situation, and yet we're not likely to see it within my lifetime, probably for generations, and that's sad.
Yeah, I know our friend Andrew would get really angry when people would answer the question, "What religion are you?" and they would say Jedi. And on the census forms.
Yeah.
And I'm totally on his side, but I also can see the humor in it.
Yeah. Well, and did it have an influence? I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know that it's. I'm sympathetic to Andrew on that.
Yeah, I know. Me too, really.
But I don't know that it's worth getting angry at the people that do it or trying to change it, because
I don't know if he was, but he was,
he was adamant.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I get it. I understand where that's coming from. I just think if everyone said ha ha ha, if everyone said Jedi, if 50% of the population said Jedi Knight or whatever it might be, then maybe the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, would start to look at the question and go, this isn't working very well.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
Yep.
Sorry.
Oh,
that's why it's important to study it. But I think I've got one up on most other scholars, because I'm not invested in it. It's not going to. I mean, my soul's not going to hell or to heaven, because I don't believe in a soul, and I don't believe in
Do you worry that you might hurt people by saying what you think is the factual truth about the Bible?
I don't think I'm not like some kind of Richard Dawkins figure. He's obviously the most famous atheist in the world, probably. Like he's
the John Lennon of atheism. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
People, he's unkind to people, I think. And he tells people that they're stupid. I don't think that people that have faith or belief are stupid at all. That's their choice. And I recognise that there are lots of different ways of being in the world. So at the same time, so I try and be polite to people. I'll say what I think. I'll say, yeah, well, I don't think Moses existed. Other scholars would disagree with me. A lot of scholars would agree with me. But I don't want to be rude about it. So I respect other people, because I'm a human being and I like people. You believe what you want to believe. That's completely fine. But your Bible belongs to me as well. It belongs to all of us. It's like had this huge impact globally. So it's not just your text, it's mine as well. So I've got every right to study it.
These books shape the world more than any other books have ever done. How do you think we're using them wrong?
Well, our gender politics, for a start.
Wrongly. It's an adverb. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to the ABC. Okay, sorry, I'll back up a bit.
No, that's all right.
How do you think we're using them wrong?
Well, our gender politics, for a start, is completely biblically based. The idea that there are just two genders, that they are made by God and in the image of God, that idea has massively damaged the environment, because human beings think that they're like the best. And that they're at the top of like kind of the apex of creation, and therefore that they can go around kind of raping and pillaging the world and its resources and its animals. So those are just two examples: sexism, patriarchy, and environmental damage that the Bible's responsible for.
Can I just ask you to fact check something for me very quickly? Okay, because I have this Noah's Ark toy. All right, so here's the Ark, right? Yeah. There's the Ark there. That's Noah. Happy.
Can I start straight away? White dude.
Right.
Okay.
So okay. Well, I think that raises an obvious question about the elephants. So it's two elephants. There we go. 2 by 2. We have 2 rhino. A bit more textbook. 2 by 2, and this is the big one. We have 2 lions, 2 by 2.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, how successful would Noah have been repopulating the world with 2 male lions?
Yeah.
This is historically inaccurate, or Noah was a bit sketchy on animal husbandry.
He was sketchy, or he didn't really get the right instructions from God. I'd be more inclined to blame God.
God's very busy. He's going, look, I'm busy making a flood. Grab some lions. I don't have time to do everything.
Why I love the Bible.
Well, we loved having you here to talk about it. Thank you so much for your time. If we can please thank Francesca Stavrokopoulou.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of stories. Wasn't there a big subsidence of not the Mediterranean, but a huge area of sunken land where the water came in? I don't know, but there were a lot of flood stories. A lot of
Yeah,
flood stories.
yeah.
And the one in the Bible is derived from them.
Yeah, well, it might be like Port Phillip Bay. Port Phillip Bay was a plain for a lot of years because
Oh.
you get this natural accumulation around, and this is why we have to keep dredging the shipping channels, because sand builds up around the mouths of inlets, bays, and the same down Gippsland Lakes and the Coorong in South Australia, where the sands tend to accumulate as the waters flow past, and they build up and eventually close it off. And they've got the bathymetry. I think we might have discussed this before, but we know that it was a plain at one point. That sandbar built up enough, and then because the inflows into the Port Phillip from the catchments are less than the transpiration outflows, that eventually it runs dry. There's where the Portsea Hole is, there was a big lake, but broadly speaking. And then the Indigenous story, or the one that I heard, and I didn't hear it directly from anyone who was there at the time, because I think it was about 5,000 years ago they time it to that the bay refilled. But the Indigenous story is that there were two young kids who were out hunting kangaroos and threw a spear and missed and hit the sand wall, and then the waters came in. So yeah, there are flood stories all over the world, and I'm sure, you know, in those sort of scenarios where you have these river mouths that have closed off for a period of time, and things have dried up, and then all of a sudden the retaining wall breaks down and in rushes the water. So yeah, I'm sure of it. Or subsidence events again. Yeah.
Okay, really, really, thanks for suggesting that, Colin. What a breath of fresh air she is. How amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
really
So,
wonderful.
maybe one day she'll come and talk to us.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing.
I've
Okay,
noticed.
guys. So waiting for the next episode of the secular guys.
Dudes,
The
secular
secular
dudes,
guys or secular dudes.
secular
I don't know.
dudes.
I can't remember who we are. Secular dudes.